Aquarius workshop, learn to die and live joyfully. I start with a quote from Pathward Lecture 82 with the title The Life and Death of Jesus. And the quote is as follows. Face in you that element where you still fear. Become aware of it, and then you can learn to die and live. As you learn to become aware of your real fear of death in any form, be it physical death, be it any negative occurrence, you free the life force in you, which will then invigorate you as you meet that which you fear. End of quote from Lecture 82. Intellectually, we know that we are immortal. But on an emotional level, we lack that inner certainty, and the triad of fear, pride, and self-will determine our attitude towards death. For fear of facing the problem of death, we cling to concepts of immortality that come from religious or spiritual sources. With this imposed belief, we try to escape death and avoid confronting our fear of death. We do not see that death and life are connected, because to the extent that we fear suffering, we fear happiness. For us, dying means that we can no longer determine the direction ourselves, and we experience that as a humiliation. We cling to life proudly and stubbornly and resist death, creating ever stronger waves of fear. Only when we have the courage and strength to go into the unknown without any security or without holding on to something that is dear to us, do we learn to die and live joyfully. Experiencing ourselves as mortal is extremely healthy and prevents us from fearing death. Only when we experience our mortality as real do we feel that we are really alive. In this workshop you will explore with a loving curiosity, using 3 themes from the past work lectures, how we can learn to die and therefore live joyfully. The first theme. Taking on your everyday little dying. We learn to die by taking on the small daily suffering dying. The degree to which we bravely and honestly go through trials each day determines the degree to which we live joyfully and accept death. When we shirk our responsibility for fear of trouble, we bring on even more trouble that we could have avoided. By taking responsibility, we discover that the inevitable trials end when we recognize them and have gone through them. Now follows a quote from Pathwork Lecture 82. If you accept death in its naked, stripped form without running from it, then and then only can you fully live. And only then will you find out that there is no death, there is no duality. You will not accept this as a consoling phase to cling to out of weakness and fear. Rather, you will experience this to be true. And you can only experience this in the great and ultimate issues when you learn to experience it in your everyday little dying. Whenever your will is not done, whenever you cringe from suffering in the wrong, unhealthy way, you increase the tragic duality. You reject death and therefore in the ultimate sense, you reject life. End of quote from Pathwork Lecture 82. The second theme, facing fear of death. The fabric of divine love permeates the entire universe, and we are part of that fabric. The higher self knows this reality, but on a conscious level we are blind and ignorant and fear death. We distrust life and cling to the idea of immortality to escape the fear of death. Only when we face the fear of death and accept our mortality will we experience eternal life as real. The next quote stems from Pathwork Lecture 234. The fear of death really says on the deepest level, I want to experience the state of immortality that I know exists, even though I am caught temporarily in the dualistic air pocket of life versus death, an either or. In that experience, in that vision, when you are in one, you do not see the other, and you fear giving up one for the other. Fear of death also implies lack of faith in the ever-ongoing reality of all life, all consciousness. However, when self-will and fear motivates a conscious mind of the outer personality, this truth of immortality is distorted and looked for in order to avoid the fear of death. End of quote from Pathwork Lecture 234. The last and third theme. Go through your negative emotions. We are unaware of the anger, bitterness, and resentment that lie beneath the fear of death, disease, and suffering. We suppress and fight these emotions that make us tense and create even more fear. We are outraged that life, God, is so cruel, unfeeling, and arbitrary. Only when we bravely go through these emotions will we purify them and slowly be born into a state of being where we choose life because we know that death does not exist. Then we know that leaving the body leads us to a better life. The last quote stems from Pathwork Lecture 253. You need to go through your inner fear and your previously unconscious anger, bitterness or rage at life for imposing death and pain on you, for putting you in a position in which you find yourself helpless against these common human experiences. As you become aware of these feelings and accept their apparent unreasonableness and childishness, you will then be able to make new connections. End of quote from Pathwork Lecture 253. For more information, look at my website. I wish you peace and all the best. Thank you.